Welcome to Sleep Haven, a place where you can slow down, let go of the day, and settle into a more restful state. Tonight, we're going to explore something that has been with you your entire life. Something that works in the background of every moment, whether you notice it or not. As you get comfortable, allow your body to settle. There is nothing you need to do right now. No need to focus too hard or try to remember anything. Just listen and allow your mind to follow along as we begin. You might be lying down or sitting in a way that feels comfortable. Your body is supported and the space around you is still. Even in this simple moment, something important is happening. Your brain is active, as it always is. Not in a way that demands attention, but in a steady and continuous way that carries on without effort. The human brain is not something separate from your experience. It is part of everything you notice, everything you think, and everything you feel. It works quietly in the background, supporting each moment as it unfolds. As you listen to these words, your brain is receiving sound, recognizing patterns, and forming meaning. This process happens naturally. You are not guiding it step by step. It simply continues on its own. The brain is not a single action or a single place. It is a living system made up of many parts, all working together. Each part has its role, and together they create a continuous flow of activity that supports your awareness. Every moment of your life is connected to this process. When you notice light in a room, your brain is involved. When you hear a sound in the distance, it is already working with that information. When a thought appears, it forms within this ongoing activity. And yet, most of the time, you are not aware of it. You do not need to monitor it or guide it. The brain manages these processes on its own, maintaining a steady balance throughout the day and into the night. Even as you rest, it continues. This constant activity is not something you have to think about. In fact, it often becomes easier to notice when you stop trying to focus on it. You might begin to think of the brain as something steady and reliable. Not something distant or complicated, but something that supports you without needing your attention. There is no need to understand everything all at once. In this space, we can take things slowly, one idea at a time. There is no goal to reach, no pressure to keep track of every detail. For now, it is enough to recognize that the brain is part of your natural state. It is not separate from who you are. Every thought that passes through your mind is connected to its activity. Every small shift in awareness comes from this same source. Even the sense of ease you may begin to feel as you listen is linked to how the brain responds to your surroundings. It is always adjusting. If the environment is still, it settles into that. If the light is lower, it adapts. It responds in subtle ways, shaping how each moment feels. There is a close connection between the body and the brain. When your muscles begin to loosen, the brain responds. When your breathing becomes slower, it adjusts again. These changes are not separate. They are part of the same system working together. You do not need to control any of this. The brain is designed to handle both activity and rest. It can shift between them without effort. As you continue listening, you might notice your thoughts becoming less defined. They may come and go without holding your attention for long. This is a natural pattern. There is no need to follow every thought or hold on to it. You can allow them to pass without engaging with them. The brain does not require constant focus. It can continue its activity even when your attention begins to drift. This is part of what makes rest possible. You do not have to manage every detail of your thinking. The brain continues its work in the background, whether you are paying attention or not. As you settle further, there may be a growing sense of ease, not because something dramatic has changed, but because you are allowing things to unfold without effort. The brain responds well to this kind of simplicity. When there is less to process, it naturally shifts into a slower rhythm. Right now, the conditions are simple: a steady voice, a comfortable position, and a moment set aside for rest. That is enough. You do not need to hold on to every word. You can listen lightly or simply let the sound be there without focusing on it. Even if your attention drifts, your brain continues to receive what it needs. There is no need to correct anything or bring your focus back in a strict way. You can allow yourself to move between listening and resting without effort. As we continue through this episode, we will explore different aspects of the brain in a clear and gradual way. But for now, we stay with this simple understanding. The brain as a steady presence within every moment, always active, always supporting, whether you notice it or not. And as you continue to rest, you can allow that steady activity to carry on in the background while you drift a little further into sleep. As your body settles a bit more, we can look at the brain from another perspective. This time, not as an idea, but as something physical, something that has shape and position inside your body. The brain sits within the skull, held securely in place. It has a delicate texture, but it is well protected by layers that surround it. Inside this space, it forms a structure that is organized in a very specific way. If you imagine the brain from the outside, you might picture a rounded form covered in folds. These folds are part of its design. They allow more surface to fit into a limited space, making room for the brain's many functions without increasing its overall size. The largest part of the brain is called the cerebrum. It makes up most of what you would see if you looked at the brain from above. The cerebrum is divided into two halves, known as hemispheres, which sit side by side and are closely connected. Its surface is marked by ridges and grooves that create a textured pattern. These patterns are consistent across the brain, giving it that familiar, folded appearance. Below the cerebrum, toward the back, sits a smaller section called the cerebellum. It is more compact, but it also has a folded surface. Its position beneath the larger upper portion gives the brain a layered arrangement. Extending downward from the center is the brainstem. This part connects the brain to the spinal cord. Compared to the other areas, it is narrower and shaped more like a column. It forms a link between the brain and the rest of the body. All of these parts fit together within the skull in a stable way. Each one has its place, and together they create a structure that is both compact and interconnected. If you picture the brain from the side, the cerebrum fills most of the space. The cerebellum rests at the lower back, and the brainstem extends downward. This arrangement creates a clear sense of layers, with each region positioned in relation to the others. Within the cerebrum, there are further divisions called lobes. These are based on location, including areas toward the front, the top, the sides, and the back. They form a simple map of how the brain is organized. There is no need to remember the names or details right now. It is enough to recognize that the brain is made up of distinct regions rather than one uniform mass. The outer layer of the brain is known as the cortex. It follows the folds across the surface, forming a kind of covering over the entire cerebrum. Beneath it are deeper structures that are not visible from the outside, but are still part of the overall design. These inner areas sit closer to the center, surrounded by the outer layers. Together, they create a structure with both surface and depth. You might think of it as something that has an outside you can picture and an inside that supports it from within. The brain is also supported in other ways. It is surrounded by a clear fluid that helps cushion it and reduce the impact of movement. This allows it to remain stable, even as your body shifts or changes position. There are also thin layers of tissue that cover the brain, helping to protect it and hold it in place. These layers, along with the fluid and the skull, create a secure environment. All of this works together to maintain the brain structure. Nothing is loose or unsupported. Everything fits together in a way that keeps it steady. As you picture this, you do not need to form a detailed image. A simple impression is enough. A rounded shape with folds across its surface, a smaller section beneath it, a narrow connection extending downward. That is enough to hold in mind. There is no need to focus on every detail or try to remember each part. You can let the image stay general without defining it too clearly. As you continue to rest, your attention can move in and out of these ideas. You might follow along for a moment and then drift slightly away. That is completely fine. There is no need to stay focused the entire time. The brain remains as it is, whether you are thinking about it or not. And for now, it is enough to have a simple sense of its form, a structure within you, steady and supported, allowing everything else to take place. You can let that understanding settle in its own way, without effort, as your body continues to rest. As you continue to settle in, we can move a bit deeper, shifting from the shape of the brain to what it is made of at a much smaller scale. Inside the brain are countless tiny cells called neurons. These cells are responsible for carrying information from one place to another. Everything the brain does depends on this ongoing exchange. A neuron is different from most other cells in the body. It has a central part along with extensions that reach outward. Some of these extensions are short and branch out in many directions. Others are longer, forming pathways that allow signals to travel across different areas. Neurons are connected to one another in large numbers. Each one can link to many others, creating a network that spreads throughout the brain. Information moves through this network in a continuous way, passing from one cell to the next. The way this communication works is fairly straightforward when broken down. Inside a neuron, a signal travels as a small electrical change. It moves along the length of the cell until it reaches the end. At that point, the signal cannot simply continue in the same form. Instead, it is passed on using chemical messengers. Between two neurons, there is a very small gap known as a synapse. When the signal reaches the end of one neuron, it triggers the release of these chemicals. They cross the gap and are received by the next neuron, allowing the signal to continue its path. This process repeats across many connections. One neuron passes a signal to another and then to another, forming a chain that carries information through the brain. You do not need to picture every step in detail. It is enough to understand that signals move in stages, traveling along cells and then crossing small gaps before continuing again. Each connection can behave a little differently. Some signals pass through easily, while others depend on certain conditions before continuing. Over time, these patterns can change, allowing the brain to adjust how information flows. Even now, as you listen, this activity is taking place. Signals are moving through networks of neurons, carrying information related to sound and meaning. There is no need to guide or control any of this. It happens on its own. Most of this activity stays outside of awareness. It supports what you experience without needing your attention. If you try to imagine it, you might picture signals moving along pathways, passing from one point to another in a steady flow. But there is no need to hold on to that image. It can come and go as easily as any passing thought. The main idea is simple. The brain communicates through these countless small exchanges, with each neuron playing a role in passing information along. As you continue to rest, you can let this idea settle in the background. There is nothing you need to remember or keep track of. The process continues, whether you focus on it or not. Now we can shift our attention to how the brain receives information from the world around you. At every moment, your senses are taking in input. Light reaches your eyes, sound travels to your ears, and your skin picks up pressure and temperature. Even when you are not paying attention to these signals, they are still being collected. This information does not stay at the surface. It travels inward, moving from the sense organs toward the brain. Each type of input follows its own path. Signals from the eyes move along one route, while sound follows another. Touch, taste, and smell each have their own pathways as well. These routes guide the signals to specific areas of the brain. When the signals arrive, they are not yet what you recognize as images, sounds, or sensations. At first, they are simply patterns. The brain then organizes these patterns into forms that make sense to you. For example, light entering your eyes begins as basic visual input. The brain processes it and builds it into the images you see. The same is true for sound. Vibrations reach your ears and are turned into signals, which the brain arranges into tones, words, or background noise. This process is ongoing. It continues from one moment to the next, without interruption. Even with your eyes closed, your brain is still receiving information. You may notice faint sounds, the feeling of your body against a surface, or the position of your hands and feet. All of this is still being processed. Most of this happens automatically. You do not need to think about how a sound becomes recognizable or how a sensation takes shape. The brain handles these steps on its own. Not every signal stands out in the same way. Some remain in the background, while others come forward into your awareness. This helps keep your experience from becoming overwhelming. You might notice this if you pause and listen. A sound that was not obvious at first may become clearer once you pay attention to it. The information was already there, but your focus shifted toward it. The brain is constantly sorting and organizing in this way. It takes in large amounts of input and shapes it into something manageable. As you listen, you can allow your attention to move freely. You might notice a sound or a physical sensation and then let it pass without holding on to it. There is no need to focus on any one detail for long. The brain will continue to process everything in the background. This allows you to let go of effort. You do not need to follow each sensation or make sense of every signal. As your body remains still and supported, this flow of information continues. Signals arrive, are organized, and then move on. You can simply allow this to happen without needing to take part in it. And as this process continues, your attention can drift more easily, moving in and out of awareness without any need to hold on. As you continue to rest, we can turn to something that quietly shapes how your experience unfolds from moment to moment. Memory is not stored in one single place, like a folder or a container. It is better understood as an ongoing process where the brain holds information for a while and then brings it forward when it is needed. Even now, as you listen, memory is already at work. Recognizing words, following meaning, and linking ideas together all depend on what the brain has learned before this moment. There are different kinds of memory, and they operate over different time spans. Some last only briefly. They help you keep track of what is happening right now, like holding the end of a sentence in mind while the next part arrives. Without this short-lived form of memory, experience would feel broken into separate pieces. Other memories remain for much longer. These are the ones connected to familiar places, past experiences, skills, and knowledge. they are not accessed all at once. Instead, they are built and reinforced over time through repeated use and attention. When the brain stores these longer-lasting traces, it does not place them into a single fixed location. Instead, it distributes them across networks of connections. Later, when something is remembered, the brain brings those pieces together again in a way that matches the moment. This means memory is not an exact replay. It is closer to a reconstruction. The brain gathers related fragments and assembles them into something meaningful enough to recognize. Each time this happens, the result can shift slightly, depending on context and focus. You may notice this in everyday life. A familiar place can feel slightly different when you think about it on another day. A past event might be recalled with small changes in detail. This is a normal part of how memory works. Alongside storing information, memory also helps connect time together. Without it, each moment would stand on its own, with no link to what came before or what follows. With memory in place, experience feels continuous. One moment leads into the next, and the present feels connected to what has already happened. As you rest here, thoughts connected to memory may appear briefly. A name, a place, a small image, something that surfaces and then fades again. There is no need to hold on to these. They do not need to be examined or followed. The brain manages this activity without instruction. It organizes what is useful, lets go of what is not needed, and keeps updating its internal patterns even when you are not thinking about it directly. This process does not stop in the background. While you are here, not trying to do anything in particular, the brain continues to sort and reshape stored information. Some parts become easier to access. Others fade into the background over time. Nothing about this requires effort from you. You are not responsible for organizing it or controlling it. Even the act of remembering something does not need to be forced. It arises when the right connections are activated, and then it passes when it is no longer needed. In this way, memory is less like a fixed archive and more like a living system that changes as you do. As you lie here, you might notice how thoughts drift in and out, sometimes tied to memory, sometimes not. There is no need to separate them or give them importance. They can move through your awareness without leaving anything behind for you to manage. And as this continues, memory keeps doing what it has always done, supporting continuity, linking moments together, allowing experience to feel connected. Now, we can look at something the brain is always doing in the background, even if it is not obvious. It moves through different patterns of activity. There is no single fixed setting that the brain stays in. Instead, it shifts depending on what the body is doing and what is happening around it. These shifts are constant, even though most of them never reach awareness. At times, the brain is more focused on the outside world. It takes in information quickly, responds to changes, and helps coordinate actions. At other times, attention turns inward and activity is more connected to thoughts, memories, and internal signals. There are also moments where the brain is not strongly directed in either direction. Activity is still present, but it is less organized around a specific task or goal. In these periods, the brain handles background processes that support stability and maintenance. These are not separate systems. They are variations of the same system adjusting itself to different needs. When the body is moving and engaged, the brain supports timing, coordination, and decision-making. When the body becomes still, the focus of activity changes rather than stopping. During rest, many networks reduce their level of activity. Others continue working in ways that help the system stay organized and balanced. This transition does not have a clear starting or ending point. It happens gradually, without a sharp switch between one condition and another. Even sleep is part of this ongoing cycle. It is not a complete pause, but a structured state where different kinds of processing take priority. Some systems become more active during this time, especially those involved in internal regulation and maintenance. None of this requires direction from you. The brain does not need instructions to move between these states. It follows patterns that have developed naturally over time. If your attention shifts while listening, that is already part of this movement. Focus is not something that stays fixed. It naturally comes forward, steps back, and returns again. There is no need to hold it in place or correct it. Even when attention is loose, the brain continues working. It monitors the body, keeps internal systems running, and processes information in the background without interruption. In moments like this, when there is less demand from the outside world, the brain tends to reduce unnecessary activity. It does not need to stay in a high level of alertness. Instead, it supports a slower pattern of operation where internal organization and recovery can take place. This rhythm is part of a cycle that repeats throughout life. Periods of activity are followed by periods of rest. Within rest, different types of processing continue, each serving a different role. There is nothing you need to do to make this happen. Breathing continues on its own. Thoughts appear and fade without needing attention. The body makes small adjustments without instruction. All of this is part of the same system working in parallel layers. There is no goal to reach in this moment and nothing to complete. Just ongoing activity, shifting between different forms, depending on what is needed. And as this continues, attention does not need to stay fixed anywhere in particular. It can move, loosen, or drift without effort while the system carries on in the background. Thank you for allowing me to guide you into rest tonight. I hope this episode helps you relax and drift into a restful sleep. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to the channel to join us for future episodes. Sharing this podcast with friends or loved ones can help them find calm and rest as well. Sleep well, and may your night be peaceful and your dreams gentle.